Hello, everybody. It's John Ross here with the XPian Daily News Report for January 8th, 2021. Got to get used to saying 2021. You know, some of I used to when I do check writing or notes, it's got to get that 21 in me, right? 2021. So today we have a special guest, and I had the wrong date on this thing, but it's the 8th, and we were going to have our special guest Rick on Wednesday, but of course things happened in our country, and it just didn't seem right to do that on Wednesday. And we got to keep praying for our country and as it moves ahead here. And it was just a shocking thing on Wednesday there at the Capitol riot, I guess we would call it. And I'd call it domestic terrorism. It was just bad. So we're going to have Rick Guzman. I'm going to bring Rick up right now. Here's Rick. Hi, Rick.
Good afternoon.
Yes, welcome to our little time together. So it's a very pleasure to have Rick with me this afternoon. As you can see in my background, that I dug up some bricks somewhere, and I don't know what. I think Rick gave me a little from one of his projects. He gave me some bricks, and I was out in the back. I don't think I'm a good bricklayer, but it just came out pretty good here. But then that whitewash, I don't know, it just didn't come out. It's fair, but anyway, we're looking at Aurora today, and I just wanted to talk with Rick. I hope some of you folks read papers, and I do. And that's another story about newspapers, Rick. How many people are reading newspapers? Anyway, today's topic is going to be losing homes, evictions, and other problems with the pandemic. And he's going to be talking about his group, is what he's with. It's got a very interesting name. I think it's got some biblical backgrounds too with that neighbor on that. It's the Neighbor Project. And I was just talking to Rick before we got on air here about that name. And that's, we have the story about the Good Samaritan and others about being a good neighbor. So that's what Rick's doing. And I appreciate Rick doing that. Thank you again, Rick, for being with us. And I'm just going to get this up. That was on Sunday's paper. It had a great article about what's happening in the community. And so if you want to learn more about that front, we're going to be talking a little off that article. But agencies brace for evictions, and it highlighted Rick's group in there, the Neighbor Project. So, Rick, just give us your thoughts on this topic, and what are some of the things out there that your group, just whatever, you start wherever you want, and give us a little more highlights of what the Neighbor Project's been doing now with this pandemic situation.
Sure. Well, and first of all, very briefly, let me just say that the Neighbor Project is a name that we've been using for just about 2.5 years now, but some people might be familiar with Joseph Corporation, which was a spinoff from Hesed House a number of years ago. And then Emmanuel House, which is an organization my wife and I started about 20 years ago. So Joseph Corporation started 30 years ago in Aurora, Emmanuel House about 20 years ago in Aurora. And then we were partnering so close together in 2018, we finally decided to legally merge the organizations into one. And traditionally, we've been really focused on a few things around homeownership. So both first-time homeownership prevention, as well as first-time homeownership promotion, as well as foreclosure prevention. We also help people with kind of being able to stay in their homes, lower income people who maybe have a hard time affording a home repair. We have a program that helps people to repair roofs or make electrical upgrades, plumbing, those kinds of things. We also help people there. And in 2020, needless to say, with the economy taking as big of a hit and with the number of or unemployment filings that we started to see, not only did people begin to really fall behind on their mortgage payments, but obviously we've seen people have a very difficult time in many instances keeping up with their rent. And so for really kind of the first time in either of our organization's histories, we had a much larger focus on helping renters be able to keep their heads above water. We were able to get a grant from the Community Foundation of the Fox River Valley. It was actually supported by a number of grant makers, including Dunham Fund and the United Way and others. And we ran a small program. We basically put it out there. Hey, we've got a rental assistance program, can help with 1 month worth of rent, typically about $1,000. And we just had a huge response, and that funding got eaten up very quickly. Fortunately, there has been an eviction moratorium in place.
Is that a state or federal or both?
It is both, yeah. So the state of Illinois was the first to put it in place. Many states did. Many states then allowed their moratoriums to lapse. And so you've seen studies that have shown that there's been a direct correlation between, unfortunately, between the number of deaths that have happened during this pandemic and eviction moratoriums being lifted. Because obviously when you are forced out of your home, you have less security, you have less of a place to protect yourself. And in many cases, people were doubling up, having to live in more crowded circumstances, being in homeless shelters, a variety of things. And so you saw in states like Texas, for example, when they lifted their moratorium, there are studies that have directly linked that to one of the factors that has caused higher mortality rates, more people, unfortunately, dying, becoming infected, and in many cases dying from the pandemic, which is one of the reasons why the federal government also stepped in. So the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, issued a federal nationwide eviction moratorium that was originally until the end of 2020, and it was just extended to the end of January 2021, so not much longer. But they basically use that exact same logic I just explained, that if you are forced out of your home, it is far more likely that you're going to become susceptible. And frankly, it's going to be to the detriment of everyone. That it
Right.
hurt if more people are getting infected, that makes it harder to control the spread.
It'll be spreading more. Yep.
For everyone, exactly. And so that federal moratorium was put in place that kind of really filled a gap nationwide. Probably should have been done sooner, but it was in place. It's now been extended, as I said, till the end of this month. So technically speaking, both foreclosures and evictions in 2020 were down, and that's because
they're on hold a little.
Yeah, I mean, because in many instances, while some evictions have continued to take place, evictions, the number one reason is non-payment of rent, and that is supposed to have been stopped. And there are a lot of organizations like us, Prairie State Legal Services, and others who've been trying to really make sure that people understand that if an eviction is being filed, there is an option. You have to kind of opt in. Unfortunately, it's not just a blanket moratorium that prevents courts from hearing those, but you have to opt in, and there's a form you fill out that says, if I am evicted, I am likely to be which is I think probably the case for everybody. I'll be in a situation where where my health will be more at risk because I'll have to double up with another family, or be in a homeless shelter, or those kind of things. And so we think that 2021 is likely to be a much different story, because we don't anticipate that these moratoriums will continue. And clearly it's been a big hit to a lot of landlords who have bills to pay.
I was going to say, how does the landlord, I'll just quickly digress here, how does the landlord, when these moratoriums, do they owe, like, I've done this with credit cards, I don't want to talk about it, but is that a accumulation of rents that they owe them?
That's
So, let's say your rent's $800 and you're 12 months or, you can just,
yeah.
you know.
So that's
So they owe all that money at that one time.
so the
Or, I mean, they could work it out, but they owe all that back money, correct?
yes. So the moratorium does nothing to defer or assist with that payment.
Right.
Still
And you got some ideas on that, how to help out on that situation. I saw some of that about mediation ideas or something like
yeah.
that.
So basically, one of the partnerships we have in place right now is with Kane County 16th Judicial Circuit Court, and it is a foreclosure mediation program. Now,
Well, that's on foreclosures.
well, and so what we're doing is we're now taking that infrastructure and that partnership to create a new eviction mediation program.
Oh, okay. That is
So
a good idea. Yeah.
yeah, and so we think that both of those. I mean, the nice thing about working with the court system is it necessarily brings both parties together and
Okay.
creates an enforcement mechanism so that here we are with the potential to be able to give somebody a grant to help get them caught back up with rent, but then we don't have any enforcement mechanism to make sure that person is able to stay in their home or
Right.
establish an agreement, those kind of things. But the court clearly
Right.
does, and that's why most of our foreclosure prevention work is done in partnership with the court because it guarantees that enforcement mechanism, and in most instances will result in a court mediated agreement, settlement between the parties that will actually help, at least for the foreseeable future, to help
Right.
some avoid a foreclosure. It's what we've been doing for years. And now the idea is that we would use that same process to
Right.
get landlords and tenants to agree that if we can get people the rent assistance that now has been passed and appropriated at the federal level, we can get them that assistance, then we can agree, have an agreement. And the way that we're hoping it will work is that we'll be able to work with people. We'll have some gap filler funds if that becomes important, but we'll establish an agreement between landlords and tenants who are in the eviction process, where everybody agrees to use their best efforts to apply for the funding that is available, and what's been appropriated is up to 12 months of rent assistance
Oh, really?
is what
So
eligible.
could that be back rent or is it future rent?
So it is potentially both. It is
Okay.
primarily, we anticipate most of it will be on the back rent side of things, and so our hope is that basically the agreement between the parties would end up looking something like, if they get that they'll both apply for this together. There
Right.
will be, a time period before we know when the funding actually comes, and the agreement might be that the tenant either, if they are approved, then there's an agreement between them that the eviction case is dropped and that the tenant is able to stay. They're made current. If they are not approved, if they don't get the assistance, the protection for the landlord is the tenant might agree to voluntarily leave, since we know this is the primary way that people can get caught up if they don't get the assistance. And there is obviously some thought that there may not be enough money for everyone.
Right.
It is still a positive situation to be able to have a voluntary departure as opposed to an eviction on somebody's record, because once an eviction happens, it becomes far more difficult for that person to be able to get housing again.
Right. So I was a landlord for a couple apartments for many, well, since my mother died. I was working on 10, 20 years as a landlord. When people leave, finding another tenant can be a difficult thing. So these landlords are it'd be best, I would think, to work it out. Wouldn't you say overall, Rick?
Yeah, I think, we've been talking directly with the judge in Kane County who handles currently, essentially all of the eviction proceedings. There's some thought that there could be so many evictions in 2021 that they may need to reassign some judges or bring on some additional.
Okay.
We hope that won't be the case, but we certainly want to be prepared for that possibility. But that's essentially what his take was too, which is, as we were looking at this, the idea that, if you're owed 6 months rent, and just for easy math, let's say it's $1,000 a month. If you're owed $6,000, and you have a program that could potentially pay for that $6,000 in full, but you might have to wait a month or two to find out if you qualify for it. Most landlords are going to say, hey, even if there was, say, a $5,000 cap, which last year the Illinois Housing Development Authority had a program with a $5,000 cap, and we helped facilitate that. But if there was, the sense is that nearly 100% of landlords are going to take the $5,000 and make somebody current, rather than taking an eviction and a judgment. So you technically don't lose that money. You get a judgment against somebody, but the percentage of landlords who are able to collect on that judgment lien is really close to zero.
Right. So in other words, both parties are it's precarious for both sides here. And we're trying to work something out to help both the landlord and the tenant. And
Jen, I just want to emphasize that point you just made. There are a lot of landlords who are in a really tough spot.
Right, I would think so. If they depends how if you, like, I was fortunate, I owned my place. That's another story, but I had some other debts, that's why I had to sell. But I did own it outright. But some people might have a mortgage or other things. And then there's ongoing expenses, of course, fix-ups or whatever you got to do.
Yep. And so those are, so this program
and taxes, I should throw in taxes here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we know this is going to be, we hope that we're going to be able to mediate a real win-win situation.
Right. That's what it sounds like it could be. And that's what we want to do. I want to ask, is this what you're working on now? Aurora Township, Fox Valley? What are you looking to help here? I know it could be pretty broad. I'm not trying to do that to you. I just wanted to know for the public out there, what are you working with on that? How is that working?
Well, right now our initial planning has been in partnership with Kane County, and so we're looking at potentially the entire county. Now, the county with the foreclosure mediation program, they have another partner with offices in their main office, I believe, is in McHenry, but they have some services they provide in Elgin, and so we kind of take the Southern Kane referrals with foreclosure.
And the foreclosures,
and they take more of the northern ones. I'll tell you that this summer, when the state of Illinois had a $300 million program to provide rent and mortgage assistance, that the Neighbor Project was the official. We were contracted to help people apply for those, to provide technical assistance.
Right.
We did an outdoor rent assistance fair partnering with the city of Aurora, and we basically fielded calls not only from all over the county, but we basically submitted zip codes of places that we had previously served. And so we ended up essentially with all of Kane and Kendall County, with eastern DuPage, the part of Aurora that goes out into DuPage, and a little bit more northern Will County, or, as you know, Aurora also.
Yeah, it's in 4 counties, but that's one of them. Yeah.
Yep. And then we even, with some of the foreclosure programs we've worked with the state before, we've worked with people out in DeKalb County, and so really it was 5. This area.
Quite a bit. It's basically the western suburbs, far west. Exactly. What you're saying is you sound like you're maybe the only show in town out this way, right? Basically.
Well, there are some others in the Joliet area, in the Wheaton and the area, but when
In Kane, definitely, right?
in Kane, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and other west areas too. Okay, well, that's in. I want to ask you about the federal program. Right now, you expect some more. It's on both fronts, the rental and foreclosures too. Some monies for both. Is that what you're
So
thinking?
no, this past summer, there was money designated for both, and what the state of Illinois found was that the demand for rental assistance was far greater than the demand for mortgage assistance, and part of that is because with so much at stake and with the asset that a home is, which is very different.
Oh, the mortgage. They don't want to dump that. The mortgage people. They want they'll figure 1 year they'll get through this and then yeah.
That's exactly what happened. And so what we saw was, the vast majority of lenders voluntarily offering, what are referred to as forbearance options or payment deferrals up to an entire year. And so,
Right. Well, that makes sense because there's too much rigmarole to go through. Yeah.
and particularly if, as all of us hope and expect, the economy will recover, people will get their jobs back at some point, people will begin
Right.
to make payments again. And so I think that what we saw was a lot of people able to kind of take advantage of a voluntary lender-sponsored program that moved those payments to the end of their mortgage, and that really helped a lot of people get through. Now, we do anticipate that there will be some people where that 12 months isn't long enough, and banks may begin,
Right.
to get to April, the 13th month of this pandemic, that there may be some that start to enter foreclosure, and we'll continue to offer programs for those people through the courts again. But what happened in December, so people are probably aware, of the coronavirus stimulus, the COVID-19 stimulus package that was passed.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
Signed on the Monday after Christmas, I believe.
Right.
8th.
I'm still waiting for my check. I want it now. I'm sorry about that. I really do want it now, but go on. Sorry about that.
Well,
I had to say that. I'm sorry.
We surveyed our staff a little bit here too. So the people that get their direct deposit, get their refunds direct deposited, most of us have received those.
Oh, shucks. That's my problem. Oh,
yeah, if the paper check takes a few extra weeks, I think.
Oh, don't say weeks. Say days.
So, well, and I'll tell you, I
got some bills. Anyway, go on. That's going.
And so the but one of the things, there's two things, more than two, related to housing, but two things we'll focus on. One is, as I mentioned, the nationwide federal eviction moratorium was extended to January 31st. Now, none of us think that that's long enough to actually get the rental assistance rental assistance, financial assistance that was appropriated actually in the hands of people, which is why working with the courts will be so important, as we're starting to do already. But the other big piece that people might have heard something about was that there was $25 billion that was allocated, nothing for foreclosure prevention or for mortgage holders, but it's for rent assistance. And I'll just quickly run down what the eligibility is and how much people are eligible for. So,
okay, go right ahead.
The idea is that people would, so you'd have to be eligible, and the eligibility there's three factors when it comes to eligibility. So number one is you have to be at 80% of the area median income or below. And that's based on 2020 income, or if somebody has recently lost a job, an organization like ours can look at their current paychecks, their monthly income, and kind of do the math and figure out. So what that means, it's actually a pretty easy threshold. What it means in our area, so say Kane County, actually for the majority of metropolitan Chicago, what it means would be that a family of four making below $70,000 would be eligible. And so, and that will move, that will change based on if you're a single household, 2-person household, a 6-person household. But again, just to give you some idea, if it was a 4-person household and you're making under $70,000, you'd be eligible. The second thing, similar to the CDC moratorium, is that you have to be able to show that you would have some sort of housing instability that would result if you weren't able to get, so show that you're facing eviction, or that that you're likely to have to be in a less stable housing position, which again most people are going to be if they're behind on their rent and the moratorium expires. And then the final thing is that you have to demonstrate a direct or indirect impact that your family has experienced related to the pandemic. So whether that is a loss of wages or some sort of economic impact, the easiest thing it would be to show that you qualify for unemployment. But it could be a more indirect result of the economy shutting down and a business that you own, has lost income. And if you can demonstrate that, then you would also be eligible. And then, so those are the three things. Finally, they say they want to prioritize for people who are at half of the 50% of the area median income or below, or for people who have been unemployed for 90 or more days. That's the priority population that they want.
It just hit me with a question here in my mind on rentals. Is that market tight, or is it still, could these people find something, or is it pretty tight?
Yeah, I think that what we've seen throughout the pandemic and in 2020 is that the number of available or vacant apartments has been pretty low. So yeah, to answer your question,
pretty tight then.
Has been tight. Yeah, and so
because everybody's holding basically, right, too.
Yeah, and you don't have some of the natural turnover, again, partly because people don't want to move in these situations, but also because nobody's able to be evicted for the most part with these moratoriums in place.
That would bring up the number. I see what you're saying. That would bring that up.
So some of that natural turnover you might see, it isn't happening.
And people moving probably just to another state or another area, probably the job situation, probably not much of that as much either. So that stabilizes it. Well, so that makes it tight. So that makes everything now. Oh, I was going to ask, just to sort of follow up on that stimulus. You think is there more? Is Biden said they're going to do more? Or have you heard on that? And would they extend that probably on that eviction notice to another month to or whatever? What you heard about the future on those things?
Yeah, so it's mostly just speculation based on what previous policy positions have been. So number one, I can tell you that there was, as people probably are aware, before this $900 billion stimulus package was compromised on and passed, there was a $2 trillion package that the House of Representatives, largely Democrats, had promoted and put out, and their number had been $100 billion, so 4 times as much was what they were gauging the need to be for 2021 and potentially beyond. As we know that the economy will recover in 2021, but it will be slow for certain segments, and there may be people who have issues that are lasting throughout the entire year, potentially into next year, depending on the pace of the recovery and which sector they're in. So we know that there had been support, at least in the House of Representatives, for as much as $100 billion, as much as 4 times this amount. And we know that President-elect Biden has indicated that that this $900 billion was designed to be a down payment on the need. Right. That is there, and so we anticipate there being further stimulus that comes in 2020.
Maybe $2,000 too. Maybe
it could be in that form. I think that studies show that extending unemployment benefits has a more direct impact on the economy. That something like, frankly, we view this rental assistance as getting hands into landlords that haven't had it,
Right.
helping tenants get more financially stable, will both help people, but also have a stimulating impact on the economy. So there are a variety of these types of assistance programs too. By the way, we were going to send it out on Wednesday too, and now we're kind of holding maybe till next week. If people received
we're getting an advance notice here, folks. Go
right.
on.
If people receive their stimulus checks and they happen to be one of those folks, maybe at the upper end, it's households up to $150,000 of income, and they don't need all of it. We have a program that
we'll take it. I got it. Go on.
Well, it's specifically we're not taking it for ourselves. We have created an eviction prevention fund.
No, excuse me there. Sorry.
Well, and I mean, obviously when dollars come,
Lord, forgive me. Please forgive me. I'm sorry, Rick. Sorry.
There is a need to sort of fund the operations and the bottom line
I understand.
of the organization, but we're not doing that here. We're basically saying, we think this is a big enough need to where people that donate to this fund, it's going to be all passed through. We're going to help to make.
Going to go to the eviction side.
Yes, we're really right now we're focusing on eviction prevention to the extent, and we think that there are going to be gaps in what this rent assistance allows. And so what our thought is that to use the funds we've raised about nearly $75,000 so far, and we want to use those funds to be able to fill in the gaps of what the federal funding may not cover. If there are people who are either ineligible for that or have other costs. We know, for example, that there are lots of people that have stayed current with their rent by, putting all of their other bills.
That's a sad story too. Or not paying for their medicines or whatever.
Exactly.
Or cutting down on food, which we always talk about going to the food bank and helping out that way instead of cutting out your.
Yeah. So we're calling it the Be the Bridge.
Okay, good.
Because we know, as I mentioned, we know that people's jobs are going to come back. We know that the economy will eventually recover, but there are some people who need a bridge to get to that point. And additionally, we know that there is federal rent assistance, financial assistance on the way, but for some it may be too little, too late. And they'll need a bridge to get to that assistance, to that lifeline there. And so, we're well positioned with our partnership with the court to be able to help ensure that people are able to stay in their homes and don't end up homeless or in an unstable or less safe environment because they've lost their job and that job hasn't come back yet.
Yeah, well, hope. I want to ask one quick question. It's not related. Well, it is related in a way. It's more for businesses. Is there in this stimulus that what's it was PPP? I guess it was 3 Ps, right? Is that back again?
Yeah, it is. It's different though this time. So there are different qualifications. The first Paycheck Protection Program was passed at a time where there was an assumption that just everybody was going to be hurt, and you essentially had to simply say you've been affected by the pandemic in direct or indirect ways,
right?
Low bar, and so lots of organizations were able to take advantage of it, and I think it was
nonprofits were too, right?
Nonprofits,
exactly. Yeah.
Yes, nonprofits, churches, many. Now, this time around, the difference is that you will have to be able to show, and I forget if there's a percentage or not, but you'll basically have to show a significant drop in I think your quarterly income between 2019 to 2020, and so you have to be able to show that your revenues dropped, I think by 25% or something like that or more.
Okay.
And so there's additional funding for those. If you think about the restaurants,
That's what I'm thinking about, restaurants and other nonprofits. I know one nonprofit, they didn't even get involved the first time. I don't know why they didn't, but they should have.
And so it may be more difficult for some depending on their situation, but this one is a little more targeted at organizations that have been more significantly impacted.
It's the same idea. You got to go through the bank or whatever.
That's right. You would go I always recommend that people just go through their bank, and if their bank isn't an SBA partner for that they are likely to have an online bank or a partner that they
They
can
would
recommend.
have somebody else they would recommend. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, well, that was just a side question because I know that's out there too.
It
And
is.
some businesses, well, it relates to all this, somewhat relates. They all flow together here. And Rick, I just, here's the website for Rick's group and the Neighbor Project. Spread this word around. Show this video to others. I think, Rick, you really, you pulled a lot of things in here. I think we should, I think this is really should be shown around. And it's the Neighbor Project .us. And here's, if you want to have a little chit chat, here's the number to the Neighbor Project. That's 630-906-9400. 9400 there. Rick, I just thank you so much for coming by. I'm just going to mention one more. I'll put my thank you. No, let's leave the phone number up. We'll give the thank you at the end. I'll leave. I'm just going to mention down at the bottom of the screen. I won't throw it up on the screen. We're remember that number to Rick's place there. Just keep that in your mind. Bottom of the screen, we have about the VNA testing for COVID-19. Just remember that number. It's 89630-892. 4355. Almost forgot that. 4355. Just keep that in your mind. Get that testing. We're still in, I think, I don't know if we mentioned it here, but it's really the pandemic is, maybe we did at the beginning. It's just not good here. We had 4,000 deaths in the country, and it's just spreading. And we just got to keep this under control. And so that's just something I've been pushing for a while here. And so, we're just going to see you on Monday. Remember that number, 906-9400. We're going to see you on Monday at 5, everybody, Lord willing. And at that time, we're going to have a special guest here, Susan Sperry, who is the executive director of World Relief Chicago, Land.
Great organization.
Yeah, Rick's wife's been involved with that, and others have, and I have, and and Susan's been with that group for a good amount of time, and she knows quite a bit what's happening about the immigration front there, and refugees and other along that line. And so I just want to again thank Rick for being with us today. It's just been a pleasure to have you, Rick. Thank you for your insights and everything, and wish your group good work here in the next days ahead. It's going to be tough times ahead, and we need all hands on deck. And we thank for the Neighbor Project for being one of those hands on deck. And so all I can say right now is I thank you again, Rick, and we're just going to say God bless right now. And bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye. We'll see you Monday. Bye-bye.